My name is Teresa Tanzi, and I'm here tonight to discuss my experience as someone who has worked in the restaurant industry for 14 years.
And I appreciate that, and we do want to hear that, but let me tell you what I've asked. We have 156 people, approximately, who've signed up to testify, so I'd ask you to be as brief as possible.
Absolutely.
Thank
I have
you.
4 points that I would like to make.
Thank you.
In those 14 years, I have worked at dozens of restaurants, somewhere between around 45 restaurants, I would say. And in all of those restaurants, one has paid me according to the law. So I can hardly blame them for not doing so. It would be an administrative nightmare to have to track every single server, how much each one makes, how long they worked, the number of hours. It's an administrative nightmare. So the problem is that in spite of the fact that they're required to do so, I, who am no shrinking violet, could never confront them because of fear of retaliation. So here I'm working for someone. I'm well aware of the fact that they're breaking the law, but there's nothing that I can do because I'm relying on my manager and the owner of that restaurant for my employment. So the vast majority of restaurants are not doing this. In fact, the Department of Labor surveyed 9,000 restaurants over 2 years, and they found 84% of them violate the law. So we have 16% that are actually paying their employees in accordance with the law. So perhaps you'll hear from that elite group tonight. Perhaps the restaurant owners that will all come before you will be a part of that elite 16, that sweet 16. But I'm here tonight to talk about those who are not elite. You'll hear from servers how they'll be making $100,000 a year, 6, 7 figures, or 5 or 6 figures. Again, those are the elite. And I'm here to represent the average person who does not make that kind of money. So working breakfasts and lunches with incredible income instability. And that type of instability, not knowing how much you're going to make each day, whether you're going to get cut before you even get a table because things are that slow, it leads to economic insecurity. And in my 14 years, I have experienced that firsthand. I've had incredible difficulty getting loans, and I've even had to pawn items in order to make ends meet. So despite the fact that I was always fully employed, often with 2 or 3 jobs, I have faced great insecurity as a server. So 7 states do this. They do a better job at paying their employees because they have one fair wage. And we're not talking about elites there. We're talking about places like Montana and Minnesota.
I just want a point of clarification from me. When
Yes.
you're quoting those statistics that's national statistics, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Thank
you. So those 7 states pay a higher wage to their employees, one fair wage, and they're not all, sunny California. There are places like Montana and Minnesota, so hardly places that are, thriving meccas. We're talking about Alaska, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, California, and Washington State. And in those 7 states, there is significant data to show that restaurants have done better, that they have a higher per capita sales after increasing to one fair wage for all employees. Their employment growth has increased, and that includes the area of servers. So you may hear people tell you anecdotally what they think may happen. I'm here to tell you what has happened in the 7 states that have made this change. They hire more servers. They have higher sales, and the number of restaurants actually grows in those states, and we have data to support that. Now, back to retaliation, because I think that that's the one thing that I can personally testify most to. As a server, you really are at the end of the power dynamic. You're at the very bottom of the pile. You rely on the manager who provides shifts. So they decide whether you get the popular evening shifts on weekends or whether you're doing breakfast on a Tuesday morning. You have the hostess who seats you. If they happen to not like you for whatever reason, they can seat you all at once. They can just choose not to seat you at all. They can put the really big popular tables in someone else's section. We have servers who are at the whim of the bartender. We have to be nice to them, otherwise there's retaliation for where they are not giving us our drinks on time. The same thing happens with the kitchen. So we have to rely upon them for giving the food to us to make our tables happy. All of those things determine how much we make in tips. And the best part is we have to rely upon the mood of our...
But wouldn't that be true, respectfully, regardless of what the wage was?
I will say no, because if I had one fair wage, then I would have been able to put that application into the bank and would have been able to show my income quite clearly and plainly and reliably, and I would have been eligible for those loans. I would have been able to say, I'm getting 5 shifts this week. I can estimate that I'm going to earn enough money to pay my rent at the end of this month, and that's not the case, and I'm here to tell you that firsthand, Mr. Chairman.
I was a bartender. I'm well aware. I was a bartender for several years. So I know, but the point I'm making is I don't see the nexus between a $3 wage and a $4 wage in your scenario of being liked. If you're liked at $4 a wage or at $3 a wage, you're going to get the good shifts, the good tables. And if you're not liked under your scenario, you're not going to get it.
Not necessarily about likability. My point is about retaliation. And the point being that women who are the predominant members of this server class are subject to different types of harassment and to different types than men are.
But is that...
And with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I would like to continue just a little bit with my story, because it does happen and it's a daily occurrence. And if someone touches you, or if you're waiting on a table and it's a party of 10 and that's all the money you're going to make tonight, and they want to be fresh with you in some way, shape, or form, I refer to it as a golf clap in my vernacular. So it's a very polite little, whenever somebody says something that's funny, you're waiting on someone and they say something that's not necessarily funny, but you have to laugh. If someone touches you inappropriately, what are you going to say? There's very little recourse as a server that you have. And as a woman, I would posit that it's much more difficult to even manage that. I have endured, I won't even say broadly, I have endured situations that are unacceptable over and over again through my 14 years. And it is simply because I do not know that at the end of working a 10-hour shift, instead of walking home with a paycheck, I have to wait and see what my customers pay me. And again, it's the bottom rung of power. I am reliant upon, if my manager wants to sexually harass me, I'm at their whim as well. It becomes incredibly difficult for any person to stand up to their manager, and when we are relying that much on them for our schedules and on customers that much for our tips, it makes it incredibly difficult for us. And there are significant statistics that have, I don't know who else is testifying behind me, but
156 other people.
I'm sure there will be plenty of stories to amplify that and statistics to quantify it, but I can tell you from my personal experience that sexual harassment is prevalent, and it's in a way because I, as a server, had the least power in the dynamic, and that's where those situations are most likely to happen, when the power dynamic is that unstable.
Any questions for Representative Tanzi? Representative Casey first. I'm sorry, Representative Giarrusso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Tanzi. First of all, you mentioned golf clap.
Yes.
So my point is, any woman or anybody getting sexually harassed, they should hit somebody with a 9-iron. Regardless of where it is, if it's at work or whatever.
I appreciate that, and we can have a conversation about the harassment that still happens in life today.
That's
it's
just
persistent
terrible. It's
no
horrible.
matter what position. As a woman, we are subject to it, and I look forward to having that discussion with you offline, and maybe you can follow me around with a golf club for a week, and we'll see how often
I'll
it gets
bring my
used.
whole bag if I have to.
I would appreciate that. I look forward to it, in fact. It'll be a nice, easy week for me for a change.
Thank you. So my question is, you mentioned states that have a different wage. You have a lot of data. I notice you have a lot of notes. Can you just tell me what those wages are? Just a hypothetical or an average.
At the states?
Yes.
They have raised it to what the minimum wage is in those states. And I don't know exactly what those, they vary, but I mean, I know that they're above the federal minimum wage, even in I would say at least 5 of those 7 states. So they are getting paid at the very least what the federal minimum wage is, but obviously what the state minimum wage is.
And how many hours is a typical waiter or server? How many hours a week do they work?
It varies greatly, and I'm sure that some of the restaurant owners can, give you more detail. But there are high seasons and low seasons, and just like the restaurant owners themselves, servers suffer through the lean seasons, and then they work 1,000 more hours, during the heavy seasons. So it is completely unpredictable, and I understand the plight of the restaurant owners. I really do, because they're gains are the servers' gains. And I would not be here advocating for something like this that's this controversial, where 150 people show up, and I would not be putting my face on it. Did I not firmly believe and did not have the data to back up the fact that one fair wage helps businesses, it helps employees, it helps the local economy, because those people now have more money in their pockets. And just like Representative Palangio said, they spend it. They like to go out to eat just as much as everyone else, and they're returning those dollars back into the industry. And, their employment growth in those 7 states has grown, including servers. We'll hear anecdotally tonight what people hypothesize may happen. They say, I will have to lay off my servers. I will have to go from 4 a night down to 3 a night. And the truth is that in the 7 states, the employment numbers have grown, including in the server range. So I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Representative Tanzi? Thank you very much for your testimony, Representative.
Thank you. I appreciate it.